did have a good conversation this week about Seth Godin's book, The Dip. Have you read that?
The Dip. No. It's one of his older ones?
Yeah, it's small. You could read it in 30 minutes. So it's like, it basically talks about how every business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, they start and they're getting momentum. It's excitement. It's the growth phase, right? So everybody goes through that. Then oftentimes people are going to plateau. And so when we plateau, that's when we begin to kind of feel discouraged a little bit, which leads to a dip. So it goes growth, plateau, dip, breakthrough. And he says every business owner will experience that cycle at any given point. And the dip is the distance between the growth phase and the breakthrough, because they're struggling leading their departments because their departments are experiencing the dip. So they talked about how frustrating it is when your results and your income are tied to people that you lead, but it's not tied to like the work that you're actually doing, right? And I'm like, hey, every leader will experience that at some point. That's where leadership is found. So I talked about like the 3 things that we have to do to lead people through the dip, which ended up being a really good conversation.
What's like the common mistake people make there?
So here's the common mistake. They feel like the dip is a problem to be fixed, and it's not a problem that can be fixed because oftentimes it starts with belief and then behavior. So you can't just fix somebody's belief. So we want to come in and we're trying to like fix it with inspiration or a new product, or you know what I'm saying? It's actually a season that has to be led through. So you cannot fix it. You have to lead people through it. So it shifts your mindset where you actually have to lean heavier into leadership, asking questions. The main thing that we're looking to do is change someone's belief. Let's say it's a sales department and they have a new compensation plan. They're struggling with believing in the new compensation plan. It's leading to a plateau and a dip. Now their belief is this compensation plan doesn't work. So instead of us saying, no, I promise you it does work, just believe me, look at my paycheck. It's, hey, what about this compensation plan do you not agree with, right? If we were to look at the way you were working your business based on the last compensation plan, and if we were to look at the new compensation plan, what would you need to change in your business to make this compensation plan true? Right? So it's just a shift in styles. That's honestly what it discovers is that the biggest takeaway I told these people is this is not a problem that you can fix. You have to lead people through it. Everybody's experiencing the dip from a different perspective. So that's where we have to lean into the conversations we're having, surface conversations. It goes back to what you and I say all the time, which is teach people how to think, not telling them what to do.
Right. Well, it reminds me of this idea. Zig Ziglar talks about people never change their mind. They make new decisions based off new information. And I always use this whenever we're talking about DISC and we're talking about C's in particular. So in this idea here where you're trying to get them to change their belief, most business owners, what they do is they just try to like force it. And instead, especially if you're dealing with a C who wants to be right, what I tell them is they want to be right. So you have to not challenge their ego and you need to introduce new information so they can now make a new decision so they can be right based on the previous context and information they had. And then now we can introduce new information and they can be right again based on the new information and context they have. Instead of saying, hey, I need you to be wrong and now I need you to be right. And so it doesn't challenge their ego.
That's right, dude. Because if you challenge a C's ego, now they're not even focused on the belief or the dip. They just want to be right. So we've led them to a lose-lose scenario. Right. The basic foundation of coaching and leadership is ask questions, right? They have to self-discover where their belief is off, not us. We can't tell them, hey, I hear that you're believing this. So it's like, it's as easy as, hey, what story are you telling yourself about this compensation plan? What are you believing? And it sounds basic, but here's the challenge. Most leaders won't go that direction because we're fixers. So when we're asking questions, we don't feel like we're actually fixing the problem. It's not our problem to fix.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to make that shift. All of a sudden, now it wasn't you that fixed it. You helped facilitate the change in belief. Now they have ownership in that because it was their idea.
Oh, dude, that's good.
Yeah, it was a really impactful conversation. And really it came from, dude, like I'm always sending out pre-call forms and across the board, there was like 48 people because I'm leading a call for this company wide next week. And so it came from that. So this call was just with 10 of their top executives. And I said, hey, across the board, here's the number one challenge I see you guys facing. And I want you guys to let me know if this is true. You guys are having a hard time leading your people through this compensation plan, the change in compensation. Your people don't believe in it. They're like across the board. And I'm like, so how are you guys going about that? And they're like, well, we're just telling them that it works. We're asking them to give it a chance. We're rolling out new products that they believe in. I'm like, that doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah. Dude, especially when you mess with people's money and you're like, just give it a chance. You're like, really? Because I'm supposed to pay my bills next month.
Yeah. So practically speaking, I had everybody on the call go check their last 30 days, the new compensation plan. So actually 60 days ago. So I want you guys to look at your compensation from the last 30 days on the last plan. Now I want you guys to look at this last month's. And I said, what's different? And across the board, everybody had made more money, but 50% of them were still not believing in this compensation plan. I mean, it's as easy as awareness. Like, are you actually looking at the plan?
Well, dude, yeah. And I like this idea of belief, because it makes me think of one of my favorite definitions of leadership or good leaders is that a leader can read a room and can also shift a room. And so it takes a level of like EQ and SQ, but also tactics for them to be able to go, okay, here's what's going on. Now, how do I get people to buy in? How do I create like the mob mentality in a good way, not in a negative way?
We talk about EQ and IQ often. Unpack SQ for those that just may not know.
Yeah. So think of EQ as like the soft skills. Like the way we often break it down is like IQ is the hard skills, right? It's the intelligence, the logic, whatever. The EQ is the more like soft skills, but the SQ is the social quotient. So it's the, can I read a room? Do I understand how, not just how I'm interacting with this person one-on-one, but how the group is interacting with each other, how I'm influencing them? How does me walking into the room influence the room? How does me not being in the room influence their work ethic, right? And being aware of that and how you influence your team outside of just direct one-to-one. So I think a lot of leaders think about, being the fixer, forcing it, and whether they're doing it through their IQ or they're doing it through their EQ. One of the pieces that gets overlooked a lot, I think, is that SQ component.
Oh, big time, dude. Okay, so practically speaking then, let's just say you're walking a leader through this, right? They have a high level of IQ. They have a fairly good amount of EQ, but their SQ is low. If you were to give them like one thing to focus on over the next week, where would you guide them?
Usually the way that I see it come out is it's the leader who is overwhelmed because they're trying to do everything with their people one-to-one, because they're good at the EQ and they can influence somebody directly when they dig in, but they don't have that one-to-many skill. I'm sure you talk about this, like the 80-20 rule of going, hey, we want to spend 20% of our time with the 80% of the bottom performers, and we want to spend 80% of our time with the top 20% of the leaders in our organization. That time with the leaders is typically going to be more frequent and it's going to be more one-on-one, but we got to get good at being able to influence the culture of the company and the direction the people are moving by doing it in that one-to-many format with the 80%. So I would start by just looking at, are we even doing it? Or are we just going one-to-one with everybody, or just ignoring them completely? And so this is where you'll see leaders do like a company-wide meeting once a year. And it's like, dude, that's not cutting it. We need to be getting out in front as the fearless leader in front of our people more consistently. Right.
Yep.
And I think also the clarity on it. So if I were to say what's one thing to work on, giving the clear expectations of like, here's what we're doing this week. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what we're expecting to have happen. Now everybody's more in the loop. They hear it straight from the horse's mouth, but they understand the mission and the vision and why they're doing what they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but that's one of the ways I see it like get off the rails initially. And I think how you have to kind of start bringing it back. But honestly, I think a big part is the leader doesn't have the skill.
Dude, you hit it on the head. I believe it's a skill set thing, because we can know, okay, I have to lean into this. So you hit it on the head, man. I think there's a lot of leaders that feel they're more effective in a one-to-one meeting. So they're more drawn to one-to-one meetings. The challenge then is when you have an organization that has like 8 different departments and you have, call it 75 plus employees. So when they'll call me, they'll say, hey, our HR department needs a training on leadership, but we're not hitting on the other 7 departments, right? And I think it's because they feel like it's easier, it's more effective to communicate to 10 people versus a room of like 60. So from the skill perspective, I believe leaders have to learn how to engage a room the same way they would engage a one-to-one conversation. So it's actually not a different skill set necessarily, right? So people oftentimes are like, I'm just going to deliver a training because it's too hard to ask pointed questions in a room full of 50 people. It means we're not asking the right questions, right? So let's say you're in a room and there's 50 people and you raise your hand and you have a challenge. Then I'm going to coach you one-to-one on through that challenge. Then I'm going to pause before I move on, and I'm going to engage the room. What did you guys hear? Who else had a similar challenge that just helped you with? They raised their hand. What specifically did it do for you? What did you guys notice in the conversation that Ian and I just had? So a lot of it's how we facilitate discussions.
Yep. I think of it like herd mentality.
Yeah, that's exactly right, dude.
You want them to see themselves in the problem, see themselves in the solution.
Yep. And a lot of communicators feel as though when they're putting on a training, they have to communicate 90% of the time. They're there. I'm there to talk. My group is there to listen. And I hope that they learn something. Whereas I take an approach, I want to communicate 50% of the time. And I want the room to I want to facilitate discussion the other 50% of the time. Right? Like, hey, what are you guys writing down? Hey, I noticed everybody just took your pen and you guys were looking down, taking notes. Talk to me. What did you write down? How does that practically help you? Right? So really it's more you're facilitating a conversation, whether it's a one-on-one or a team meeting or like a larger group gathering. But for some reason, mentally we go to, I have to prepare, I have to have the slideshow. There's nothing wrong with that, but we just get in this like performance and then we ask for ahas in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and the leader, I think, does it sometimes thinking they need to do it with a megaphone and that they can't have some of that dialogue, because I think it also gives the leader good feedback to go, oh, are they getting this? Are they, what are the type of notes they're writing down? Oh, shoot, that was not the takeaway I was hoping they were going to have from that story.
Yep. Yeah, dude. And that's why we engage the room. I want to know, are they hearing me correctly? So in a one-to-one conversation, I would just pause and say, hey, what'd you hear me just say?
Yeah.
How did that land? But we feel as though that's like not the right conversation for a large group, or we're worried it's going to get derailed. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I always tell leaders is the person asking the question controls the conversation. And so if you're asking questions to the room, you are controlling the narrative of that conversation. You now have more feedback as to what they're hearing, and you may add something to what you just shared because what you're realizing they're hearing is not what you're trying to communicate. So we're missing the mark often when we're talking 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, dude, 50-50.
Let me give you a 2.0 version of this. This is like old school sales as well, right? That the person asking questions is controlling the conversation. But what I tell people is that the person who gets the answers to the questions they ask is the one that's controlling the conversation. Because you see that sometimes with leaders where they get like bulldozed, or people kind of wordsmith or talk their way out of stuff, where it's like you ask a fairly direct question and somebody rambles for 5 minutes and they never actually answered your question. Who's actually in control there? And so it's helping the leader go, no. If I ask something, I'm getting an answer to this thing. And so I will re-ask. I'll ask it in a different way, but I will get the answer because it's part of that control in the conversation.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And again, without continually like pausing and asking for feedback and questions, then we miss so much of that real time. Really what it is, it's real time coaching, which I believe is way more valuable than a structured one-to-one conversation, right? So it goes back to the 1-3-1 method that you and I both teach. It's like, man, very quickly, even in a large group, someone's having a challenge with something, we can say, hey, what's the one challenge, right? Instead of us giving them the answers of how to go through it, because now we're not teaching anybody how to think. We're just telling them what to do. It's, okay, so that sounds like a major challenge. What are 3 things that you could potentially do to move through that challenge and get to the other side and let that person go? And now you have hey, who else has a thought, right? What else could Ian do here, right? And then it's like, okay, Ian, based on the feedback you just received, what's one thing that you'll commit to leaving this meeting that will move you through that challenge? So, dude, again, we're not there to just speak at and put on a training. Even my trainings, you've been part of some, dude, I consider them more like workshops at best, because I want to engage what people are hearing. There's way more value in the real-time feedback than just in the content that I can deliver.
Sure. How do you compare this to, say, like sports, right? Thinking about a football game, how much coaching goes in practice and preparation versus how that coaching looks different in the moment in the game, right? Because that's what I hear you saying is like the in the moment stuff is actually more valuable. And because that helps us win the game, it's going to get us the result. We're already on the goal line. Like, this is the moment where we actually get the bang for buck out of it. How do you look at those two, where do you differentiate those conversations or topics, but how do you separate like the in-game conversations versus the, pre-game or even post-game? I think the post-game is one people miss a ton of, like, hey, let's recap, let's revisit, right? We used to do this in our sales organizations where we would say, we're going to watch game film, right? Because the idea was if one guy can make a mistake and we all 10 can learn from it, well, guess what? Now all 10 of my guys learned something, and now they don't all have to go and make the same mistake themselves. So by doing that little like debrief post game, end of day, recapping the day before, we benefit and we start to learn faster from other people's mistakes or successes, what worked, what didn't work. But there's, I think, just an oversight sometimes of like, we're go, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And we never learn from any of it.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so to go down that analogy, I think practice is, I mean, it is what it is. You're preparing. So you have a game plan, but how many times do you see, like at the end of every single series, you see the offense go sit down with their coach and they're pivoting? Because rarely is the game going to go exactly according to how you planned. Like rarely. Right. And so I think if I translate this to a leader who's preparing for a meeting, it's like you have to know what outcomes you're looking for. Right. So in a game, I'm looking to win the game. I'm looking to not turn the ball over. Right. We're looking to not, punt, whatever the outcome you're looking for is. That's really what practice is for. I want to make sure that like the fundamentals are there. So for me, when I'm looking to lead a training, it's like, what do I want them to walk away with? What outcome do I want? But I'm not planning every single time block of this training. It's not like, okay, guys, hey, here's part 2, here's part 3. Go ahead and turn your piece of paper. It's like, that doesn't work, right? Because as I'm training, people are thinking, they're identifying challenges, they have roadblocks, they have questions, they're unsure. And so if I'm not pausing after each like series or after each thought that I'm presenting and getting feedback, I am missing so much valuable time to coach people through in real time what they're going through, how it's translating. Similar to like after a meeting, I think that's where, if you're engaging your team and we're working through, a new compensation rollout. We're talking about, hey, here's what the compensation rollout is. Here's why this matters. Here's what this means for your people. Here's, whatever else. Here's the outcome of this compensation plan. Well, now they're going to actually go roll it out. So going back to your scenario of how important after a game is, it's like after we've rolled it out, I want to bring those leaders back and say, hey, what are we hearing? Mm-hmm. What challenges are our people navigating? So we had the plan. Is what we had hoped happen actually happening? And if not, that's where the real coaching and pivoting comes in, right? So I don't know if that gives you a real analogy, but I can't tell you, man, how many times it's why I don't have notes when I'm doing a training. I'll have slides for things that I want them to visualize, and I'll have like I'll know like the 4 things that I want them to walk away with and that I'm going to teach them. Yeah. Outside of that, I mean, every training, I could do the same training, my creating a winning culture training for 10 different companies. It's going to be delivered in 10 different ways because I'm honestly delivering the real value in the feedback, in the questions, in the challenges, and teaching them how to actually apply this. Right?
Yeah. Dude, I've got a great story for this. So I've done a little bit of work with some former SEAL team guys, and I feel like I've got some huge lessons from them. And this idea of planning and how you should go about that. So I'll give you the quick story. Talking with some of these former SEAL team guys, one of the things they said was planning is everything, but the plan means nothing. And I think it's actually an Eisenhower quote, but the idea is like us going through and preparing for all these different scenarios is all of it. That is the practice, right? Us being prepared for what could happen, what is going to happen. But at the end of the day, when we're in the moment, I can't rely on that. I have to be able to pivot, adapt so that we can win. And so he told me this story. He said, we're doing, and this is best I can remember. It's like a, mission in an undisclosed location, 6 dudes drop down from a helicopter on, ropes or zip lines or whatever. As they're coming down, a wasp gets up into the mask of the communications officer, gets in his mouth, stings him in the throat. And so he says, man, you can plan and you can prepare for a lot. You're not going to plan for that. And so one of the things he said was, we don't plan for best case scenario and we don't plan for worst case scenario. We plan for most likely. And so we can paint in broad strokes with most likely what could happen. And then we plan contingencies off of that. So it's kind of like this big chess match where it's like, hey, there's really only 6 outcomes that can happen. If that happens, it's then the flow chart, one layer deeper. Now there's 12 different scenarios to account for, or there's 18 different scenarios to account for. and you just keep working your way deeper and deeper into the scenarios. So what he said happened is they land, or they get to the ground, they realize something's wrong. They had planned for, what do we do if we're down a guy? So helicopter lands, they load that dude back in the helicopter. The officer number 5 takes over comms for number 4, because this was, again, it was already premeditated and planned. What do we do if? And they continue on their way, because they had already predetermined, can we still execute with only 5 guys instead of 6 guys? And that was a yes. So those hard decisions had already been made. They weren't waiting till the moment to try to decide. And the other big lesson that I took away from this that he described was like, as the leader, I have to trust that other people can do their job and what they're responsible for. And so in this example specifically, he's like, it doesn't do me any good if I try to resuscitate that guy. I need to be eyes up about what we're going to do, because now we're 30 seconds behind. And so I need to be figuring out how we're going to make up 30 seconds to stay on mission. Helicopter is going to land. We're going to load him back in. There's a medic in the helicopter. I have to be able to trust that the medic's going to do his job and take care of my guy. But it doesn't do me any good to try to resuscitate him, get over him, help him, load him in, whatever. My role is actually to be eyes up and start figuring out how we're going to make up 30 seconds. And so to me, that was the other huge piece of like, even in crisis, I still have to stay true to the roles and responsibilities, especially as the leader, because otherwise I'm letting my entire team down because they don't know what direction to go. What are we doing next? Who's taking over for who, even as much as we may have planned for some of this. And so that idea of planning, not for best case, not for worst case, but for most likely, and then planning contingencies off of that. I feel like, especially this time of year with quarterly planning, I've been saying it every week, is like most likely what's going to happen. And I think that's true for accountability. We use this framework daily. And one of the things we talk about is when we're estimating duration of how long something's going to take. Because the reason I want to know duration of a task is I want to be able to start to estimate objectively somewhat the capacity that my team has. So if I know how long things are taking, I've got a little bit of an idea of, is our backlog of work 2 days out or is it 2 weeks out? And so people are always going to feel busy, but I want to know, are we going to miss? Are we not going to make it? And so the reason that I want to know duration is for that objective measurement of capacity. And one of the best ways to get there is to say, most likely, how long is this going to take? Not best case scenario, they pick up first ring, they have all the answers, they get me the thing, it's 5 minutes, but most likely, is it 2 days worth of phone tag? And then they have to go ask their supervisor, and then they have to see if it's available, and they have to source this thing, and they have to get me a quote, and they got to email it to me. It's like, most likely it's going to take a week of phone tag back and forth to get me this answer, not just an easy 5 minutes, which in theory it could, but most likely that's not the case. So let's not plan for best case. Let's plan for most likely.
Yeah, dude. It's like, I use this analogy often. They're like, well, a 10 out of 10 would be, let's use real estate for an example. A team does, 50 million 1 year. And they're like, a 10 out of 10 would be if we did 150 million next year. Well, most likely you're probably not going to 3x your business, right? And it's not impossible.
Everybody wants to. You talk to anybody this time of year, everybody wants a double or a triple.
Everybody wants to. And so I always say, and this is a kind of, you say it better, but I'll say, hey, give me the middle ground from like extremely doable to like pretty far out of reach, right? And I think that's the most likely, right? So hey, 150 million is like 10 out of 10. But when I ask you how you would do that, you have no idea. 60 million is very easy. You got to recruit one person or just go do 5 more transactions. What is a realistic number that's going to stretch you, but that you could hit given that everything goes according to plan, right? And so they'll usually say like, hey, 80 million, great. So we're looking to increase 30 million over the next year. Now we can start from there. Right. And again, I think that's because so many people, especially this time of year, it's like, it's a fresh start. It's like, I just want to rethink everything. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but if you're trying to fit everything into the next 12 months, you're likely going to miss the mark. Then what happens is, because it's not going according to plan and they didn't plan for most likely, they just change the goal altogether. So they move the goal post versus adjusting like the metrics, the habits, the activities that are getting them there. I see it all the time. Well, going into this year, we wanted to do 150 million, but after Q1, it was looking like we were only going to do like 80. So we moved it to 90. So it still pushes us, right? But they're always moving the goalposts versus acknowledging, what actions do we need to be taking to actually get us closer to this goal.
Right.
And so I think it goes back to like, oftentimes people don't think of two things. They set the plan, but they're not answering the most important question in my mind, which is what could get in the way of this? What roadblocks could happen? So we don't have a predetermined plan if rates go down, market crashes. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Like, what are our most likely 5 biggest roadblocks?
Yeah, like a contingency plan, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I heard in the Navy SEALs example, right? The other thing I heard, which we weren't talking about, but my brain always goes to leadership. What you said is when the bee got stung. I think what most leaders would do is they want to fix that problem. They go from leader to fixer,
Yeah.
and so they would just go right there because I'm the leader. I got to help this guy. I got to resuscitate
Yeah.
this
Somebody
guy.
give me a
But
set of
now
tweezers. Let me pull this thing out.
That's right, dude. That's right. That's not leadership, right? So we need to raise up a team that knows what to do when those things happen, and we continue to lead through that challenge regardless. So oftentimes it's easy to lead when things are going well. Your team's operating well, there's no challenges, sales are happening, whatever. But then the second someone gets like stung in the neck, the leader's like, well, there's no one else capable, so I'll fix this. This is my job to fix this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, well, you just went from leader to doer, and you just put your entire team at risk.
Yeah.
Because A, you didn't have that contingency plan, right? Like not everybody knew what we would do. And B, you felt like you're the only person that could solve this problem. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I see it all the time, and I know you do too. It's like, that's when the leader becomes the bottleneck. My team isn't selling, I'll sell. Right. My team's not recruiting, I'll recruit.
Yeah,
Nobody can do this as well. Nobody can do this as well as me.
Yeah. One of the
And
phrases I always say is like, as the leader, whatever that secret sauce is that you have, we have to be diligent about making sure that is leverage to the business and not a crutch to the business. Because you see this with like, say like a leader that has a big social media following and his team needs to hire. Well, instead of his team learning how the heck to post a job description and go out and hire off a job board so they can grow the company, they're like, oh, hey, could you just post this? And it's like the whole business now is built around the crutch of this guy's social media, rather than his social media being fuel on the fire and being leverage for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, dude. Yep. Well, I think that goes back to what you just said, skills. Like, dude, the number one thing that I see often in leaders is they got in this leadership role because of resume, longevity in the role. They were really good at the job.
Yeah.
So top salesperson, you've been here for 10 years. Now I'm going to have you lead a team of 20 people. So they know how to do the job well, but they never developed the skills or the mindset to actually lead. So there's a wild difference in selling to leading.
Typical,
right? I'm just using sales as an example. That's right. That's exactly what it is. And so when the leader is the one that has to, like, they're always going back and fixing the problems, or they're just delegating the very menial tasks, like, hey, you have a big following, can you post this here? And that's their strategy. That just tells me that there's a higher level of thinking that, like, this leader needs to be developed to learn, like, how to get the most out of their team. And it's way more about the result we're looking for than how we do it, right? Yeah. And then once we know the result we're looking for, we got to answer 2 questions. What do we need to do, and who do we need?
Yeah.
And those are oftentimes we ask why and how, and the how always gets in the way. So we move the goalpost before we even set the goalpost, because we're starting to say, hey, I want to do 100 million. Well, how are we going to do that? Yeah, we probably aren't. So let's go 70 million. It's like, no. Put the goalpost at 100 million and think completely different. It's very similar to Science of Scaling, which is Ben Hardy's new book, or 10X is easier than 2X.
Right.
It's the leader's job to get our entire team thinking completely different if we want to get an increase in those results.
Dude, this is a great segue to another topic and a conversation I had this week, where we were talking about the idea of, as a leader, your role is to make the people around you better, like a really fundamental level, right? And I was working with a client and we were talking through this. And when you jump in and act as the fixer, I compared it to parenting, where you now have 18-year-old kids that still don't know how to tie their shoes because you keep jumping in and tying their shoes for them. And so the best example I see of this is if you look back at Tim Tebow, right? Yeah. Tebow was the guy that so many NFL teams gave a chance because he made the people around him better. There were teams that were like, we'll try you out at tight end. We'll put you at fullback. We'll let you play safety. Like, he wasn't the best quarterback by any means in the NFL, but so many teams,
but they wanted him on the team.
They wanted him on the team because he made the people around him better, right? That's right. And the flip side of this, there's a great video where Gary Vee, has a sports agency. And so he's talking about how he met with an NFL coach and they're talking through like a potential draft pick. And the NFL coach says that he's not going to go after this guy. He's like, ranked, top 10, first round, whatever. And Gary's like, why? Like, what's the deal? Like, why would you not take him? He's like, dude, we've seen his habits, whatever. This guy, Saturday night, will be out to the club till 4 a.m, partying, whatever. And Gary's like, oh, so then he's going to show up on Sunday and he's going to shit the bed. And The coach is like, no, he'll go out, he'll have eight catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. And Gary's like, I don't get it then. Like, what's the problem? And the coach goes, well, he's going to take 6 other guys with him when he goes out. And those 6 guys are going to shit the bed. And so
he's going to teach the other 6 guys that you can go out and get blacked out drunk on Friday and go dominate on Saturday.
But they don't have his gifting. They don't have his skills. Or so what the coach said is, he said, I'm going to take the guy who maybe is ranked 3 positions back, or 3 rankings back. I'm going to take that guy because that's the guy that stops the other 6 from going out. And so what he's really saying is, I'm going to take the guy that makes the people around him better. And I think this is one of the most overlooked things, whether it's managers, leaders, founders, executives, is they're so used to and so good at being the guy that executes that they don't think about making the people around them better as their default.
Yep. Yeah, dude. No, I mean, it reminds me of, there was a company that I was coaching, and they had a top salesperson. Like, we're talking top in the entire state. This gal was just on fire. She could close like nobody's business. The challenge was she was so toxic to the culture, right? And so she made everyone else around her worse because the way she talked to them, she was late to every meeting. Her talent was there. 2 things happened. One, she was causing other people to not want to be present in the office.
Sure.
Right? It's like, I don't even want to be around her. But 2, the leadership allowed it because the results that she got. And so although they were getting 10 out of 10 from this gal, they were getting 50% from everybody else in the business. So when they finally realized this, I came in and worked with them on culture. And I just said, listen, your standards and expectations are not a respecter of person. And so if you say you have to be in the office, here's the metrics that you agree to when you're here. That's for everybody, not just your, bottom 80%. We can't let the top 20% get away with things that we deem as company standards and expectations.
Right.
When you do that, the right people leave and the wrong people stay. So even if they're getting those results, they were burning people out left and right. And it wasn't because of the job, it was because of this one person. So when they realized this, the CEO finally let this person go because they had so many complaints. Dude, he had, I want to say 4 or 5 people from different locations all across the state call and thank him. And they saw their sales increase. They saw their turnover decrease, and their culture began to thrive, right? And so it's the exact same thing. You could bring on somebody who's extremely talented, but is going to be like such a toxic person for the culture. And when culture suffers, everybody suffers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so our job is to, honestly, when I'm talking culture and recruiting, I'm not looking just for like sales or resume. I'm looking for who matches the predetermined way that we agree to show up and treat each other. Mission, vision, values. Are they coachable? Do they give 100% effort? Do they elevate the people around them? Mm-hmm. Because I can train and I can coach to results, right? So I could bring in somebody who's a B player and I can make him an A+. But if I bring in an A+ player in terms of results, but they're like a C- in terms of culture, our culture just reset to a C- culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Dude, I want to ask you about standards and expectations because I feel like it's something that always comes up. And I've had a couple of guys, I don't know if I mentioned this to you yet, a couple of guys make a statement like this, and they're all kind of in the same vein where it's a conversation where they're a little bit frustrated and with a particular individual on their team, and they end the sentence with, and I'm paying this guy X. Yeah. There's this expectation of like, they should be able to figure it out because I'm paying them this. And, right off the bat, there's like this, like how does their comp plan tie into you being entitled to a particular expectation or result? And I think it's one of those things that leaders sometimes struggle with or maybe overlook or don't acknowledge, where they're going, yeah, I have these expectations, but is that articulated? Am I supporting that person? Yeah. Is it clear? Like, I'm sure there's a ton that goes into it, but I feel like it's a standards and expectations type conversation when a leader gets to the point of saying, frustrated, and I'm paying this guy this. It's like, whoa, okay. I'm sure there's some stuff to unpack here, but what do you think when I bring that up?
Oh, dude. I mean, every time I hear that, and I hear it often, I'm literally thinking there something is unclear, right? And so you've heard my response. I would honestly say, hey, Ian, tell me what does that tell me about your leadership? And I'm probably gonna identify one of two things. It's either an unclear expectation or a lack of accountability. So the expectation was clear, but we're not holding this person accountable, or we don't know what accountability actually means. Right. And so there's no reinforcement of either the positive behavior, or there's no redirection of a negative behavior. And so now we just live with this frustration when really we as the leader, we've contributed to it. Right. And so that's where I would have to ask more questions and coach somebody through it. Yeah. I'll give you a real example. This is probably a pretty elementary example, but I was coaching this company. I'm not going to say what the industry was, but they said, hey,
one of their P&L and the name of the founder.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they said, hey, man, I'm frustrated because I had two people that are constantly showing up late. And I'm like, okay, so what do you mean? Well, we start at 8:00 and they're rolling in, and then they're putting on their, they're putting on their uniform, and they actually don't get to the team meeting until 8:05. And I said, okay, so what does show up on time actually mean? Well, we start at 8. I'm like, okay, well, did you communicate to them that they need to be walking in the door and present in the building at 8, or ready and to actually work in the team meeting at 8? And they're like, well, I would just assume that people know that 8:00 means we're standing up in the team meeting at 8:00. And I'm like, okay, there's the problem. You're assuming. When you say we start at 8, you need to tell them what that means. Tell them that it means uniform on, in the team huddle, ready to go at 8:00.
This is what it looks like.
This is what it looks like. So the standard is like what we commit to. We commit to showing up on time. The expectation is, what does on time mean, right? So Don James, like the Dogfather, famous OG college football coach, I would say Mount Rushmore coaches for the University of Washington Huskies. Go Dogs, by the way. He had a saying. He said, the meeting starts at the top of the hour. Don't be late. And so if I told you that, what time would you assume the meeting starts? Or what time would you assume late, like being on time is?
On time or late?
On time.
You're 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, somewhere in there, because we're starting at top of the hour.
Yep. The meeting starts at the top of the hour. Don't be late. That's all he says. So what would you expect? You have 60 players. What time would you expect some of them are rolling in?
I'll guarantee some of them are rolling in at 8:59.
That's right. And so if he just said meeting starts at the top of the hour, don't be late, they're technically on time. Mm-hmm. Well, what he says is on time is 15 minutes early. If you're here at the top of the hour, you're late. That is the expectation, right? So the standard is meeting as it starts at the top of the hour, don't be late. That's usually where we stop. And so we just assume people know, like, yeah, well, everyone gets here at this time, or I'm here 15 minutes earlier. Hey, I want to get rolling right away. Mm-hmm. So when leaders often will say, be here on time, that's the standard. Now the leader's frustrated because people are rolling in 1 minute before and it's getting in their way. Well, it's because you didn't actually tell them what on time means to you. So teach them on time actually means 15 minutes early. If you're here at the top of the hour, you're late. That's a very practical example. And that's where I see it break down. And it's because it's redundant. It's assumed. It's, will we model that behavior? And I get that. But as your company grows, if you are not black and white and extremely clear, you will always live with that frustration. So I would expect someone to say, well, I pay this guy extremely well, but he's not hitting his metrics. So I'd say, well, how clear are the metrics? What's the accountability that's in place? Mm-hmm. How long has he not been hitting his metrics? And when was the last time you had a coaching conversation with him? Well, I haven't talked to him about it in like 2 months, but I'm so frustrated because he's never actually hitting them. Okay. So what does this tell me about your leadership? You say that you have an accountable culture, but you actually don't, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's oftentimes one of two things: unclear expectations or a lack of accountability on the leader.
Yeah. No, I love that redirect of helping them take ownership for it, because most leaders want to take ownership, but I think that's a really helpful question for them to go, oh yeah, what am I doing that's creating this within me that's impacting the results?
And every time I ask that question, it kind of stops people. Like, you can tell they don't want to hear that. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I can't fix Ian's problem. Ian is not in the room. So I can't fix a person that is not present.
That's great.
But you're the leader. So what does this tell me about you? Oftentimes they identify it very quickly. I actually haven't followed up with him in 3 weeks, and I've been frustrated for 3 weeks. Okay. So there's a lack of accountability. There was no clear cadence of accountability to make sure this person stays on track. Or, well, I told him on time. Okay. What's on time mean? Well, at the top of the hour. Okay. Are they rolling in through the door at the top of the hour, or are they in their seat, notepad out, ready to take notes at the top of the hour? Right.
Yeah.
And so honestly, it's annoying. And I just call that out. I'm like, I get this is annoying, but you have to be so extremely clear that it leaves no margin for error.
Yeah.
Right. If all of that is in place and this person is still not there, then I would say, how long have you been feeling this way? Well, I've been feeling this way for 6 months. Why is this person still here?
Yeah, if they have been
That's what I
doing
would
the
say.
thing.
And I said that recently in a large group with this one director over a department for a pretty large company, and I was working them through this. Well, everything this director told me they were doing was on point. Standard was clear, expectation is clear, accountability. I would argue it wasn't accountability, but was continuing to follow up, right? But it was still, the behavior was still not changing. It just led me to, why are they still on the team?
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, that's still a leadership issue. We're allowing people to stay inside of our company for too long when we actually are doing the right thing. And that's when I would also say you have an accountability issue. You say that it's 3 strikes, you're out, but you've given this person 7 strikes. You just taught the entire company that 7 strikes is actually okay.
Yeah. Or
right?
you've moved the goalposts on what a strike actually is. Like the ambiguity starts to kick in. One of the tools I often use or encourage is like for the clarity's sake. Well, how do we be clear?
Yep.
Make it really, really simple. Hey, I need you to stop doing this, and I need you to start doing this. I need you to stop showing up at this time. I need you to start showing up at this time. Here's what it looks like to show up. Here's what ready looks like. Explicitly clear instructions. I got this because I've got 4 boys, and sometimes little boy brain doesn't click on everything. And so you have to be explicitly clear and go, I need you to stop doing this, and I need you to start doing this. And for whatever reason, it's like light bulb goes on. Oh, okay. Stop doing that. Start doing that. I've got a direction to head, and I've got something to move away from, and I have something to move towards.
Yep. Dude, that's such a great example. Oftentimes we focus on what we need people to stop doing, but we're not helping them realize what they need to start doing, right? And so we don't formulate like the full clarity. We don't get somebody on the same page.
Dude, do you find this that so often a lot of leadership skills training is so overlapped with parenting?
Dude,
like OIQ.
The last 2 trainings that I've used, the last 2 trainings that I've done, 80% of my examples were parenting. And here's what I realized. That lands the most. Even for people that aren't parents yet, they still have some level of they still have something to compare it to.
Well, it's like the 18-year-old not being able to tie their shoes. People go, oh my gosh, I don't want that. I would never do that. And I think it also challenges a little bit of the like, I wouldn't be a good parent if that was the case. Hey, well, you're doing it in the business. What's that say about you as a leader if that's what you're doing in the business? You must not be a good leader if we're still letting our employees not be able to tie their shoes. Big time.
Well, yeah, and practically speaking, bro, and I say this with like, just transparency. I've learned so much more about leadership being a dad, because it's like I can coach people well inside of an organization on a coaching call, but in real time, when like the crap hits the fan and like tensions are high and people are stressed, I'm completely disregarding everything I know about leadership, and I'm going to like telling, hey, we don't do that, but I'm not saying what we do. Hey, stop doing that, but I'm not asking questions of what led to this. I'm not actually resolving the issues. That's how I was until I realized I had to like hold a mirror up and say, okay, I'm actually not leading the most important team that I have the way that I teach every other leader to lead. And as I've made that shift, especially with one of my daughters who's more, a little bit more like it's her world and we're living in it, right? The second I made that switch, probably about 2 years ago, dude, we have seen a massive shift. And so I use that example because it's one people can tangibly relate to, right? Not to mention, for me as a leader, I just believe that who you are is how you lead, and we're creating a culture everywhere. And so oftentimes, if we really believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything, then I want whatever I teach leaders to translate into their home. Right? The biggest win for me is not that it's showing up on a P&L, it's that it's showing up in someone's marriage. Because I believe that if it shows up at home, it will translate into the business. Right? And so that's just kind of my approach. Not that I'm like coaching people on how to be better parents or spouses, but I'm like, this is universal.
Yeah.
This doesn't just work with your team. This works at home. This works with friends. This works anywhere you go. And when we can learn that, we're flexing that muscle all the time. That's when the real skills get developed.
Yeah. And they overlap,
right?
And you get way more repetitions at home than you do in the business.
Way more, dude. Way more. Yeah.
You said something earlier that sparked this for me. I did a training this week for a team where we talked about impact versus effort. And I almost feel like I need to draw it, but like, imagine you've got a an axis for impact and you've got an axis for effort. And this correlates really nicely with that idea of 10x is easier than 2x. But what I find happens, and what this group resonated with, is we go 2 times the effort to get 2 times the result or 2 times the impact. And at some point our brain kind of goes like, I don't know if that's worth it. And so the example I did with this group was I said, I want you to write down your bank account and I want you to write down your, monthly cash flow, your check size, whatever. And I want you to double it. So double both numbers. Now tell me how much in your life really changes. Like, do you buy that new car? Do you go on that vacation? Do you move into a different house? Like, it's probably not enough to actually create some different impact, some different kind of effort. And then we did the exact same thing again. I said, now add a 0 to it, add a 0 to the total number, add a 0 to the monthly number. Now what changes? Do we go on a different trip? But we go on that trip, but also we bring people with us, right?
Yeah.
We move to that other neighborhood and we make sure that we've got a space for mom to come stay. We get that new car for this person, but we also get it for this person, right? We start to be more generous because of the impact.
Yeah.
But what happens is we just assume by default that it's linear, that 10 times the impact is 10 times the effort. And it's not, right? It's like, we both know it's 3 to 5 times the effort in order to get 10 times the impact. And so I think what often happens is, you were talking about setting targets earlier. I think what often happens is we don't set big enough targets, or the business doesn't set a big enough target to actually give us the motivation to move. And so we go, the target's twice as big. It's like, nothing really changes. That's not getting me excited to jump out of bed. But if we go, man, the target's 10 times as big, we're gonna have to put in 3 times the effort or 4 times the effort, but we get 10x by doing that. Now people are like, that's worth it. And really, I think that's what it is. It's like the internal dialogue of saying, is it worth it or not? And when the target is big enough and the impact is big enough, people will actually move. And so I think when it comes to, we talked about people this time of year doing quarterly planning, annual planning, is they're not setting targets big enough and they're not mapping out the plan of how to get there. And it's ultimately not going to be worth it. And so then they're going to flop and it's all going to be futile and for nothing.
So, I mean, my mind instantly goes to, and you know me, like I talk so much about like mission and vision. And I think that's where people will set a target, but they don't answer 2 wildly important questions, which is, how does this make me feel? And what does this do for me? And really it's the how it makes me feel and what it does for me that will actually help us answer the question of, is it worth it? Because outside of that, it's money, it's numbers, it's market share, which I do believe those things to an extent are motivating and driving.
Sure.
The biggest challenge where I see, or the biggest area that I see this, is in companies who are actually doing pretty well. And so it's good enough. So if I use a realtor as an example, right, just very basic, or an investor, either one, it's like, man, they're making $500,000 and they've found a way for this to work. They can still take two vacations a year. They're home for dinner with their family, and it's good enough. That's where I feel like this like that it's that group of people where this is the hardest part. Mm-hmm. It's like, is that 60% effort good enough? Right. And again, this was a reality for me. I had one of my best years in real estate, and we were doing annual planning, and I had like upped it by 20%. And I was like, yeah, that would be good. But it didn't change the way that I showed up. It was just like, if I just worked a little harder and I like increased my metrics just a little bit, I can hit it. Mm-hmm. And I had a leader ask me, he said, hey, Levi, here's the reality. You are talented. And the challenge with that is that you can show up and give 60% because it looks like other people's 100%, and it's good. Like, you drive nice cars, you have a boat, you can take trips, like things are good.
Jeez,
and
we get it, man.
If you're, and he's like, he goes, and if that's okay for you, then that's okay. But you're giving 60% effort. So my question for you is, are you okay giving 60% effort? And if you're not, what does 100% actually look like? That question is the one question that got me thinking wildly different. Mm. And so it wasn't even about what do I want? It was, what does 100% effort look like? And when I started realizing what 100% effort looked like, and I was taking into account like the dad I want to be, like the physical, my physical life, my faith, my friendships. Now I started thinking through, what would I change going into next year to give 100% effort and to live like a 10 out of 10 life? right? And so again, I that's where I go, because I can only coach someone to something and hold them accountable if it deeply matters to them and if they have clarity as to what would change. So for me, it wasn't even about how do I increase the amount of people that I talk to and the amount of appointments I set. It was actually, what am I going to say no to, right? And so I'm actually not going to work with clients under this price point. I'm not going to drive more than like a 20 mile radius anymore. Anything that doesn't fit this box, I'm going to refer.
Yeah.
And when I did that, I actually had more time and I made significantly more money, right? So it was not like a 2 for 2 or a 1 for 1, right? Going back to what you said.
It's that,
so that's where my mind goes.
It's that Ben Hardy quote. I think it's what keeps you stuck is a clear path to a lesser goal, not knowing what to say no to. It's good to great, right? It's harder to go from good to great because you've got something to lose versus from bad to great. I'm helping a group right now. It's a mastermind. And kind of the whole premise of the mastermind is that entrepreneurs get stuck between like a $3 to $5 million net worth because they work. They get to this point and now they got something to lose. And they go into conservation and preservation. And that's not their natural wiring. And it's not what got them there. So the whole group is just designed to, hey, how do we get you from the 7-figure plateau that you're stuck at to 8 figures? How do we get you to break through 8 figures? Because that's the tipping point that a lot of guys can't make that jump on their own.
Yeah. So this goes into like high performers and meta performers, which you and I have talked about, right? So the challenge with high performers is they get to a 3 to 5 million net worth, or they build they crack 100 million in revenue, and it's good enough. You are seen as top of your industry. You're living a good life. And so the challenge is we start to actually pull back a little bit because we don't want to risk our high performance status. And so we actually dip into safety. We stopped acting the way that got us to where we were. We're not thinking what's possible because we hit this original target that we had set and we never saw past that. So it's the safety net, right? And so again, it's like the difference. The meta performer is constantly saying what is possible, not what's doable, not is this good? Hey, are we happy? It's what's possible, which constantly keeps them in like there's a level of risk, right? There's change that we stop taking because our life is like good enough. And honestly, guys like you and I actually can't tell someone that it's not good enough. Like that's also the thing. Yeah. Someone could say, dude, my life is great. And if that's the case, I still want to get them thinking, but like, man, where in your life do you want to see an increase? Is it time with your family? Do you want to give more? Do you want to donate more time? Do you want to impact more lives? It's no longer about like, what do you want your net worth to be? Yeah. Right. So again, it goes back to what you just said. We have to ask different questions when it comes to annual planning. It's not like, what do we want to do? How are we going to get there? What gap is that? What could get in our way? How many people do we need to recruit? I mean, all those things matter. But first it's like, what's possible? Why does this matter to me? What does it do for us? What does it allow us to, how does it allow us to live? And then we start there.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I love your perspective on it, because I got some good advice on the flip side of the spectrum where a guy said, don't let somebody talk you into the pursuit of more just for the sake of more. But what you're describing is yes, but also we need to have a different destination other than just more. And we do need to clarify that. So yeah, how would you say, like, if somebody's struggling with this, or maybe a better question to ask would be, how does somebody know that they're a good candidate to have this conversation with us?
That's a great question. I think a couple things. One, if you've grown your business to like your original vision and now you're struggling to see past that, right? So it's like, again, it's the good enough, right? And now there's like potentially 5 different options. And when you have 5 different options, you have no option. And so you're kind of stuck in that creativity cycle, but you've seen a pattern where things are really not changing, but they're still good, right? I would say it's time to have a different conversation. 2, I would say it's the person who's asking or who's realized I actually don't need more. I would go from not more, it's better. So what does better look like? Not more. Yeah. Often do we always do more? And that's the trap as an entrepreneur. Like there really is no ceiling. And so people get into they become an entrepreneur, start a business, get into sales for freedom, and they get out of it because of the lack of it. because any like entrepreneurialism will take everything from you that you give it. And so it's less about more and it's more about better. And that's what it was for me. It was like, dude, I was making enough money. I wasn't driven by the dollar amount. I was more driven by what is a better quality of life, better relationship with my family, better physical fitness, better financial picture, right? And so again, going from more to better, I think that so anyone who really relates to that, like, hey, it's good enough. Okay, what does better look like? Where do we see improvement in your family? Where do we see improvement in your time, time with your kids, traveling? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if someone's stuck at it's good enough, I would say it's time for that conversation. If you continue to have the same results year after year after year, I would say it's time to have that conversation. Or if you're struggling identifying what does better look like and you're stuck in more, it's probably time to have that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. What's the takeaway somebody can get if they decide to come to an event with us, sit down with us one-on-one? Like, what's the outcome, how you see it, that they'll walk away with?
Yeah, I think practically speaking, they're going to walk away thinking differently. And I think that's the most important thing when you run a business or you lead a team. You have to constantly change the way you're thinking. So they're going to walk away thinking differently. We're going to give them, we're going to help them. We're not going to give it to them because they have to do it. We're going to help them get really clear on what they want next year, not just in terms of goals, but in terms of vision. Answer the question, what does this do for me? How does this make me feel? Who else does this impact? And then practically speaking, we're going to dive deeper into the operational side of things, the systems it will take to get there, and introduce them to Grant, who you and I know, who's a fractional CFO for many companies, entrepreneur himself as well. And I believe Grant's going to bring a ton of value just to help them think differently and approach their finances from a different perspective. So I think there's a lot of really practical takeaways. And here's the two words that I would say they'll walk away with: confidence and hope. Those two things. Like if they can walk away being confident in the plan they've set and have hope that it's actually a reality, that's what I want them to walk away feeling.
Yeah. I was explaining this to somebody the other day. I said, Levi will help you with the what, and I will help you with the how. Right? We both overlap, but I think primarily those are the questions that we help people answer: is what and how.
Yeah, and a big one, and you know this about me, and I think it just comes without saying, but I really want to help them with the why. So I'm going to help them with the why first. Why does it matter?
Yeah. I always think of why as prerequisite. It's like, you shouldn't be in the room if we don't know why.
And here's what I've realized. It's always been a prerequisite for me, so I've stopped talking about it more. And it's the one thing people keep asking me to revisit with them, right? And I think it's because it's easy to go from why to what, right? And I think the why drives the what. That's right. Yeah. So it's the why, the what, and the how. Like that's what we're going to help them unpack.
Yeah. Awesome.